Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you once again for taking time out on your Friday evenings actually, to come out here and learn some AI, ML, neuroscience with us. So this week, actually, first let's just talk about how did last week go? Everything okay? Did everyone manage to submit their stuff or are going to do that very soon? Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Very happy to hear that. Okay, so now we'll begin week 3. So you've seen this before. Attendance form is up there. It should be open. If it isn't, yell at me. I'll go fix it. Otherwise, pretty much same stuff as last week. We're gonna have next unit. Unit 3 is gonna be basic neuroanatomy. Eric over there, one of our TAs, will be presenting a lecture he made. So I hope you guys pay attention. I think he's done a great job. And as usual, one synthesis question is gonna be due on Tuesday, and then all the synthesis questions plus the project is going to be on Thursday. And I think for this one we don't have a technical project, so it shouldn't say or there. But aside from that, everything's the same. So just take a second to do the attendance. If there's any issues with that, definitely come to us afterwards, so we can get that sorted, because we definitely want you getting credit for that. Okay. Take a few seconds for that, and I'll let Eric come up now. I think you clip this on.
Okay. All right, I'll just wait a few more moments until everyone finishes the attendance. Sounding good? All good? All right. I'll continue. All right. So today we'll be talking about basic neuroanatomy, and I hope it'll be as interesting as the AI stuff you've been learning for the last 2 lectures. All right. So today we'll be talking about how neurons work, and we'll also be talking about different parts of the brain. All right, so we're gonna start with. Oh, do you have a question? Slide. Sorry. Yeah. Did you? Yeah. Do you see that? Right. Okay. So we're gonna start with the neuron, and the neuron is pretty much the basic building block of our brains, also our nervous system, and it can do some really cool things. So we'll start with the parts of a neuron. So you can see we have dendrites, which are like the tips, and you can think of them like the inputs of like our neuron. And then we have like the cell body, which is like it performs our cellular functions. And then we have the axon, which is this like really long thing. And note that like this is not to scale. So like this neuron could be like up to like a meter maybe in length. So they can be like super long. And then we have the synaptic terminus, which is like the ends of the neurons. And also, I forgot to mention, the axons actually have myelin sheaths in them for some neurons. And this increases the speed that like the action potential propagates through the neuron. So one important thing about the neuron is the sodium-potassium pump. This is inside the axon. And you can see every cycle we have sodium going out of the cell, and we have potassium going into the cell. So this will help our cell maintain a negative voltage of negative 70 millivolts, and this is called a potential. And also, you may notice we have like ATP coming in, being used, and it's becoming ADP. So this process, since it's like not like it's against the gradient, meaning like it's creating a difference in like the inside of the cell and the outside of the cell. This requires energy in the form of ATP. Okay, and then how does a neuron fire? So we start with negative 70 millivolts, right? And then we'll have like a slight action potential, like it'll like slightly go up. Not an action potential, threshold of excitation. So it'll like slightly raise our voltage to negative 55 millivolts. And then believe it's the sodium gates will open up. So it'll let all the sodium that we let out of our cell before go back into the cell. So it was going out, right? So it'll go into the cell, it'll like create a really like, well, not too high. It's only 30 millivolts, but like still much higher peak action potential. And then you can see it's like plus 30. And then this triggers our potassium gates to open, and this will cause repolarization. So it'll go all the way back down to where it started. And then it actually goes even more. You can see it's actually slightly below, and this is called hyperpolarization. So it actually ended up slightly lower voltage than our start. And then finally, step 5 is like our sodium potassium gates. They do their jobs, and then they'll like slowly like bring that voltage back to negative 70 millivolts. And you can see, so like we were like talking about a tiny part of the axon, right? But like this would trigger like the next part to like fire, then the next part to fire, and then the next part, and the next part, and then like this whole thing will like travel through the neuron and then out the outputs. Okay, and at the end, so you just saw like in the last slide, like we have like the synaptic terminal, right? This is what's happening inside the synaptic terminal. There will be like an enzyme. It's going to be called acetylcholine enzyme A or something like that. It's going to create acetylcholine, which will travel like in this vesicle out of the cell, and then it'll go through this, I believe it's called the synaptic gap or something. Synaptic cleft. And then it'll go into the receptors of the next neuron, and then the action will continue going. So does anyone have questions so far? No questions? All right, should we keep going? Okay, so this is part 2. This is going to be about the brain, which is like just a whole bunch of neurons. It's actually 86 billion neurons and over like 100 trillion connections. So it's like really, really complicated. It's like even more parameter than GPT-4, even though like GPT-4 is pretty smart. So the brainstem. So this is like probably like the oldest like part of the brain, like the part that first evolved. It's basically it performs our involuntary actions such as like breathing, circulation, digesting, and then it's also responsible in sending and filtering information. As you can see, it's connected directly to our spinal cord. Our sensory nerves will go down, which is like go up, which is like when you like feel something, right? The information will be travel like up your brain. Also, the motor nerves will go downwards because it's like commands being sent to your body, so it'll go like downwards. And we have the medulla oblongata, we have the pons, and the midbrain, and these are all parts of our brainstem. Okay, so this is the cerebellum. I don't really think it's the part of any brain, it's just its own thing. And it deals with body control, motion memory, and balance. So like, I'm sure all of you have experienced like when you like do something a lot of times, you can like start doing things without thinking. That's the cerebellum. So it just like knows how to do like your repetitive actions without thinking and like really quickly, really efficiently. That's the cerebellum. And then we get to like the forebrain, which is pretty much the largest and most complex part of your brain. It plays a central role in like processing the information for like complex cognitive activities such as like thinking, and then we'll go over like parts on the next few slides. So the first part of forebrain we're going to talk about is called the limbic system, and this is like behaviors that you need for survival. So we have like the thalamus, which is for sorting our data. We have the hypothalamus, which is for homeostasis, so like maintaining your like body state. We also have the hippocampus for storing memory, and finally we have like the amygdala, which is also called like the lizard brain because it's like doing things through. It's like it triggers your fight or flight response. So it does things like aggression. It processes your emotions. It also learns through reward and punishment. And this is like a pretty old piece of brain that you have. Then we have the cerebrum, and these are like also parts of the forebrain. And we have the basal ganglia, which is for motor control. And one thing that it does that I found interesting was that it can like accept or reject signals from the brain telling which muscles to move. So, and the result of that is that you can move like a single finger or a single muscle because it like filters out your information such that you can like have very fine grained control over your body. And we also have the corpus callosum, which connects two parts of the brain. So I think all of you know like your brain has like two halves, right? And this is the thing that like connects both parts of your brain. And then we have the cerebral cortex, and this is like, it has like a few parts and deals with like really complicated functions. So we have let's start here, the frontal. So this is like your thinking part. So all your thoughts and like your like cognitive tasks processing and all of that, they're in the frontal part of your brain. Also like decision making, your emotions, and also your personality. This is all like your thinking part. And then we have down here the temporal part, which is for memory, hearing, and language understanding. And then we have the parietal, I think it's called. This is for like touch, spatial processing, and spatial manipulation. And then finally we have the occipital lobe, which is for like visual processing and interpretation. And it has like facial recognition, it has like depth perception, and like this is how like you could like walk into a room and like recognize all the objects, and something that like it's still very hard for like a machine to do. So let's talk about how our brain is similar to artificial neural networks, since like we're a club that like looks at both, right? So neurons are the basic building blocks of like both of them, although like the neurons kind of work slightly differently. The neurons, they receive inputs, they perform a computation, and then they output like a single result, right? So you have many inputs and you have a single output. And we both have like hierarchical organization. And what this means is like you start with like for the brain, for example, you start with like just like the colors and maybe like light and dark, and then the next like it processes to the next stage, and the next stage might do something like object recognition and like spatial processing and other stuff, and then it gets to like even higher level stuff like thinking and like decision making, right? So it's like hierarchical. Our neurons can also adjust to new training examples. This is because like we all learn, right? Both machines and humans. We also process information in parallel. So like in computers, it's really difficult to train a neural network without a GPU. And the brain, well, all the neurons, they just work independently pretty much. So like they can just all process at the same time. And they also both exhibit non-linear behavior. So this is why you can like approximate pretty much any function, not just a linear function. So they can be used, you can like use a neural network for like many, many tasks. But like they also have differences. So a neuron can either fire or not fire. I mean a neuron, a biological neuron. But in a neural network, right, the neuron can output a floating point number. It can be like either if it's like sigmoid, then it's like 0 to 1. If it's like ReLU, then it's like 0 to like any number. And the brain, like when you're born, right, those like weights or like the strength between neurons is determined from genes. But like in a neural network, you don't really know what to initialize them to, so you just randomly initialize them and hope for the best. And also, there's no evidence that our brains do backpropagation or like calculus. We're not exactly sure, but there's like some hypothesis. So like in 1949, Donald Hebb proposed the associative learning rule, which is that like you basically associate this maybe this sound with like this reward and something like that, and then like those like neurons, like the bonds between them get stronger. Um, and also the brain keeps learning after they have been trained. So, but like in a computer, right? Once you've like deployed your neural network, you don't really train it again. But like, I mean, yeah. Well, people are working on like learning after training, but like that's not like what most times you would do. And also, brains are just vastly more complex than neural network, at least for now. But they just have like so many neurons, so many connections, and they can just do like so many different tasks. So like you can like you can walk, you can read, you can you can think, you can do a lot of things. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh yes. Uh, I think Varun would be a better person to answer that.
I can try to answer this to the best of my ability. So you're asking, like, is the reason that we don't have a brain digitally, like in silico, because of computational reasons, or is it because of like organizational reasons? I would argue that it's definitely organizational reasons, because the study, like neuroscience in general, is still definitely a developing field. People are studying and learning new things about the brain every day, and a lot of this stuff, like especially like what artificial neural networks are based off of, is neuroscience from the 1900s, not necessarily the new stuff we're learning every day. Because the truth is that biology is a lot more complex, and computer scientists like their neat little algorithms with theoretic guarantees, right? It was hard enough for us to step away from things like ridge regression and like linear regression and step into the world of like, okay, we don't really know what's going on with this nonlinear like approximator, but we're gonna accept it anyway. That was hard enough. Now the field of neuro AI, what we're trying to educate everyone here on about, is the idea that you can elucidate intelligent network design from modern neuroscience. So it is definitely, in my mind, and I think a lot of people would agree, more like a lack of intelligent structure and interactions between like different modules in a neural network. Not to say that scale doesn't matter though, but I believe that you can only get to a certain point of intelligence with simply data and scale and compute alone. There has to be something underlying all of that that we have not cracked yet, that is the reason for this kind of pseudo intelligence that large language models like GPT express. You know, you can like gaslight it into thinking 1 + 1 is 2, which is like argument, right? You can try, maybe if you're really good at that stuff, you can convince me, but it's a little hard.